So just to give you a bit of a quick introduction, I've recently joined WR Partners as a HR consultant, so providing services to support clients and companies with the here and now in any employment related matters, but also to support them on their journey, providing strategic employment advice and delivery for where they want to go to. So purpose of my discussions today is just to give you a brief sort of summary really on some practicalities of considering preparing for IR35 and some of the steps you need to do along the journey. So can I have the next slide please, Paul? Okay, so who is responsible for IR35? Well, for some, there is a large project to be completed by April in assessing the true working relationships for existing contractors. So we've all got to remember it's not just a one-off event. So from April, you will need to have processes which will need to be implemented that deliver fair and consistent outcomes each time contractors are engaged or renewed. Where they are renewed, you'll need to obviously review regularly to make sure that there's no changes in the working relationships during that period. The systems you use will need to collect and store assessments in case it's subsequently challenged either internally by the contractor or externally by HMRC. Your internal processes will also need to be evaluated to ensure that no new contractors are engaged or commence delivery of services prior to an assessment taking place. Next slide, please. So consideration should be given as to who will actually complete the ongoing assessments which are now required, and if any additional support is required to ensure that there is full understanding of the testing criteria. Whilst the SES tool, which Paul mentioned earlier, will aid some decisions, it is encouraged for this not to be the only assessment completed, owing to it not being 100% accurate. Therefore, those completing the assessments need to be competent in their understanding and of the test factors, which may require additional support and training. Next slide. So what is going to be communicated during the preparation stages? Well, communications during assessment are encouraged to ensure that contractors are fully aware that A, the assessment is being completed, B, what is actually being assessed, and C, highlighting any areas considered as either inside or outside payroll. Having open discussions during assessment stages could mean that simple adjustments can be made, although caution should be applied as the contract needs to be a true reflection of the practices in place, as John mentioned earlier. Open dialogue can also help to alleviate any potential disputes surrounding the outcome of the assessments completed. Dialogue between both parties during the assessment will help to ensure understanding, allow contract input, and allows opportunity to make adjustments where possible. If it is envisaged during the assessment that a contractor is likely to be regarded as inside payroll, it would be wise to commence discussions surrounding how this would impact the contractor and seek a mutual way of moving forward. For example, if you want to retain the services moving forward on a long-term basis, discussions may need to be held to negotiate new rates to compensate for any deductions the contractor may face. If it seems unlikely that you'll be able to retain the services, this allows opportunity to seek new service providers in a timely manner. Once a decision has been reached, the outcome needs to be communicated in a status determination statement, as Paul mentioned earlier, which must include details surrounding the decision reached and the reasons which have led to the decision. The statement needs to be shared with the contractor and the next party in the supply chain. Verbal delivery of the outcome is encouraged to allow full understanding and for the next steps to be agreed, including how the contractor may challenge the outcome. Next slide, please. Whilst contractors are not employees and therefore do not have the right to appeal, they do have the right to challenge the assessment via a status disagreement process, which Paul referred to earlier. This process is client-led, and a final decision must be reached within 45 days from the date the disagreement is received. Therefore, there is no time limit as to when a challenge needs to be raised, but you would want to assume that the challenge would be made immediately, as the contractor would be subject to the deductions once the agreement has been reached. It is encouraged for the status disagreement process to be planned to ensure a full understanding of who will handle such challenges and timescales involved. And you may also want to consider documenting this process in order to have complete transparency. Next slide, please. It may be appropriate for the same person or the people who are completing assessments. Sorry, I think I missed a bit here. So it may be appropriate for the same person or people who are completing the assessments to communicate details of the assessments and outcomes in order to provide continuity. However, if there are a large number of assessments, consideration should be given to the time each element takes. It may be deemed that a separate communications team is needed. However, internal handovers will need to be required to ensure that the communicator is fully aware of the background and how that outcome has been reached. Consideration should be given as to who will handle any statement disagreements, as an independent from the assessment should handle the disagreement process in order to demonstrate that a fair and reasonable process has taken place. Disagreements can be received verbally, which need to be logged as the clock starts ticking from the date the verbal complaint is received. So how are we going to obviously communicate? Well, personal direct communications are encouraged owing to the complexity surrounding IR35. However, as a result of the ongoing pandemic, which I'm sure we're all used to now, if they can't be delivered in a personal, safe manner, you can consider having remote meetings or telephone. Discussions should be noted or recorded in order to refer back to at later stages. For example, if a contractor is going to challenge the outcome or if there is a HMRC inquiry. However, the recording of meetings is only just encouraged as best practice, it's not actually required. So the outcomes of any assessments need to be communicated in advance of any payment. Sorry, next slide, people. So the outcomes of assessments need to be communicated in advance of any payment being made for services delivered on or after the 6th of April. Therefore, in regards to timescales, it may be necessary to send the status determination status prior to the 6th of April in order to comply with the new legislations.